Yesterday, we have discussed about how a story is to be constructed with episodes. And Aristotle describes as turning the stories into episodes. Now, the abstract outline to which we have reduced the story, this needs to be converted into series of concrete events or episodes, and that series must be linked by necessary or probable connections if we are to satisfy Aristotle's requirement and avoid the defective plot structure which describes and even described earlier as episodic. One in which the sequence of episodes is neither necessary nor probable. By taking example of Oedipus, we understand that how Aristotle is trying to bring the things and try to point out the whole single line story, how it is being converted into a complete episodes and series of episodes made the tragedy with a complex plot more appealing to the audience and fulfilling the object and aim and target of what tragedy is supposed to be. Since the central events of our plot, which we are discussing right from yesterday about Oedipus, our central event is Oedipus and Oedipus's killing of his father and sleeping with his mother. Now, it would make sense to have those events drive the others also, drive the other events also. Now, in both cases, killing his father and marrying, sleeping with his mother, in both the cases, human on himself somehow feels to be insufficient to reach to the plot and to the whole action that we are discussing about. So somehow we have to take certain amount of support or supernatural assistance to convince, to convey the whole idea. Now, please remember and recognize this thing, what I'm talking about, what I'm telling about. When Aristotle is pointing out that Oedipus is killing his father and sleeping with his mother is the central line of the whole play. And as we have seen yesterday also that there is a accepted tradition in Greek society that if they are not in acceptance with an unwanted infant, they can kill him, they can throw him away. This is a routine practice of Greek society. Now, if a baby who is unwanted and who is supposed to be killed, now this baby is going to grow up, and if this baby is going to grow up and to do such a terrible things in future, how will he grow up? And so we will postulate such a prophecy, and Oedipus will be exposed precisely because it is professed, it is foretold that when he will grow up, he will kill his father and sleep with his mother. This was a prophecy. Now, if you see very carefully, my friend, this is a very common routine trend in the whole. You can experience it in the whole society, in all the societies almost. That when a son, or when you will find out that when an infant born, the kings or the royal families or the aristocratic families used to have his fortune, which in our Indian mythological system we called it as kundali. And with that fortune you start to understand, you start to find out that how this infant will grow up. Similarly, you will find out, my friends, that Aristotle took the support of supernatural announcement and prophecies. And in the prophecy is that this boy will kill his father. Now, when he has done these things, he will be terribly polluted. Now, in a Greek religious thought, it was very dangerous for any city to harbor such a polluted person or persons, you can say. They could bring, because this polluted person will bring down disasters on the whole community. That is what a religious thought, Greek religious thought. Now, if this happened, as we have seen at the beginning of the play, that the plague broke out, people were dying in the state. And then, if some calamity, some disaster takes place, naturally the city will try to identify the supposed source of pollution, that who is there, who is responsible for these type of things. And they'll try to get rid of this polluted person from the society. And this you can say, my friends, will give us a plausible mechanism for setting in train the inquiries which will lead to the discovery of the truth. And again, a prophecy can help us out here. Thebans, where Oedipus ruled, Thebes, Thebans would naturally turn to an oracle from Delphi for getting help in identifying the cause of their problem, and we can frame the response to the point of inquiry into the right direction. Now, please understand how many things Sophocles has added into it to make it a complex plot. This is how Aristotle is expecting that the playwright needs to make it a complex plot, has to be aware of the social systems, the religious understandings, and how these religious understandings and how these norms of social system can be added into it to make this particular one line, or make this particular plot a successful complex tragic plot which will evoke or which will reach to the object of tragedy. Aristotle is interested in pointing out all those things. Now, moving a little bit ahead, because we need to understand one more thing when we are talking about all these aspects. And what is the one more thing that we need to understand? That Aristotle, somewhere in chapter number 11, has mentioned that he did not carry the idea of God in his in any sort of poetic writings. We have discussed it in earlier chapters. So how he is allowing this supernatural assistance to be the part of tragic plot? Before answering to this particular idea, before answering to this particular question, let us move a little bit ahead and find out that in chapter number 18, which looks at the structure of a plot from another perspective, complication and resolution, which is in Greek called as desis and lucis. Desis means complication, lucis, lusis, means resolution. And its literal meaning is tying and untying. Tying, untying, tying and untying. Desis and lucis, complications and resolution. Now, this complication and resolution define the two stages of plot. The two stages of plot, the plot which is hinging on the change of fortune. And change of fortune is the central idea of Aristotle for any tragedy to reach its objective, which we have seen that from chapter number 7, he is trying to bring out this idea very carefully. The complication is everything. Everything up to the beginning of change of fortune, and the resolution is everything from there on, where the change of fortune takes place. From there on, the resolution starts. For example, once again, we'll go back to Oedipus. Now, in Oedipus, the change of fortune begins when the news of the death of Oedipus's supposed father arrives. His supposed father. I think we have already narrated you the whole story of Oedipus in the last semester when we talked about drama. So I'm not going to repeat it once again. But if you see that the change of fortune in Oedipus begins when he received a news that his supposed father is no more. And the truth about his real parentage, the truth about his real parents, who were the real parents of this man, because the person who dies is saying that he is not his. The person who died said that he was not father of Aristotle. Now, when the news comes that Aristotle's, sorry, Oedipus's real parents are not those who took care of him for long time. Now, this point which we are talking about, change in fortune, that point was already identified in chapter number 11, and we call it as a place reversal. Please remember the two words, resolution and reversal. The reversal and recognition, sorry. Anagnorosis and peripatia. Please remember these different terms that has been used. Now note that complication and resolution that we are talking about are not parts of the play, but they are parts of the action which is embodied in play's plot. This complication and resolution, as we have seen it with recognition and reversal, are part of the play, but here complication and resolution are not part of the play, but they are part of the action. It is not been narrated by anyone in the play that this is complication or this is a resolution for this complication, this problem. This is part of the whole action, which is embodied in plot. Now the complications which we are talking about, those complications are not actually include into the events which occur before the start of the play. As I said yesterday also, there are something which is off the stage. If you remember, if I ask you what is a complication, what is Hamlet in one line, Oedipus, sorry, Othello in one line, Shakespearean tragedies, which also follow certain norms of Aristotelian concept of tragedy. If you are looking into it, you will find that to take the revenge of his father's death is the central line of Hamlet. Revenge. And in taking revenge, there is a delay in action which causes to the death of the hero. A very simple line about Hamlet. Now, the complication in Hamlet is why his father is killed. Who killed? The ghost says. But why his father is killed? By his own brother. Now, whatever happened between both, between the brothers, has already taken place before the action begins in the drama. So the complication has already been taken place before the start of the action. So it is not essential that complication should be the part of action when it is going on. No, it has nothing to do with that. It may be or it may not be. There's all possibilities available for that. We cannot say that there is a complete sense of inclusion because it's not part of play, it's part of action. But what complication did, mentioning in chapter number 18, what this complication made the whole things to enact. When this complication is reported, the effects of that complication has started to take place in the form of action in the whole play. In Oedipus, everything is involved. Oedipus's birth, his exposure, his survival, the circumstances under which he killed his father and married his mother, the onset plague, and appeal to Delphi, which the god pointed out this crisis and prompts, and this appeal to Delphi, which that crisis prompts, sets in the train of the inquiry, and this inquiry leads to discovery of the truth. All these things, right from birth to the exposition of truth, all these things are crucial to the plot. But precedes the play's opening scene and is gradually disclosed to the audience as the play proceeds. Now, the play is not directly saying to you, the play is not directly pointing out to you, the play is not directly coming, explaining to you that yes, this is how Oedipus is birth, and this is how the prophecy about Oedipus, this is how Oedipus is going to kill his father. Nothing is being told to you before, nor in any prologue of the play. The whole thing, which is essential for a plot, this is gradually disclosed to the audience. It has not to become in the form of events as we find it out in history. History needs a chronology to come. But if you see, this is not essential for any sort of, you can say, chronology. It is not at all possible for any sort of chronology that you will see appearing in any sort of actions that a play is taking always. And that's why it is most essential, my friends, to understand this fact that a play always discloses the things as any playwright is expected it to be disclosed. Now, one could, in principle, have a play which consisted solely of resolution, because it has to explain, it has to clarify, it has to untie the whole knots. Now, in such type of plays, the change of fortune would have already begun, and then the play will simply trace its completion and consequences of it. Aristotle gives best example for this as Aeschylus's Persians. The fact that Aristotle says that the complication includes what is outside the play and often some of what is inside, and it confirms that he recognizes consisting solely of resolution. This is what Aristotle says, that complication includes something which is outside of the play but refers to something which is inside in the play. Complication is not essentially to be the part of the action inside the play. No. Of the state, something has taken place which has its effect on the ongoing process of the play, ongoing process of the action, which will give a possibility to understand that, okay, this will lead to resolution. This will reach to the untying of that particular difficult situation. This is what Aristotle is trying to say in chapter number 18. If a plot consists of complication and resolution, again I am saying that this is not part of the play. These things are part of action, which is inside of the plot. And complication not essentially to be the part of the whole play. It can be an offstage activity which will reflect into the actions that are taking place, which will lead to a possible resolution. Now, this complication and resolution These are supportive things for excellence in plot construction. And this is what Aristotle says, that this is a very key element in poet's art, that if he has to construct a plot, his plot should be excellent one. And that's why he must embrace both the parts, complication and resolution. So he cannot say that I'll not use any complication, because without complication you are not able to find out any sort of reversal or recognition in the play. Reversal and recognition, we have talked separately on reversal and recognition. The comment later in chapter number 18 points out that many poets, many poets handle the resolution badly. And when they handles the resolution badly, this harks back to a section of, you can say, of certain action. It will harm the certain section of action. And you'll find out in middle chapter, in the chapter of 15, he discussed and interrupts this discussion of character, saying that the resolution needs to be handled very perfectly by the playwright, by the dramatist, by the tragic poet. Now, according to Greek text, resolution should arise from the plot itself. Resolution should arise from the plot. That is, the poet should put together a sequence of events. The poet should put together a sequence of events in which the change of fortune and its consequences are, you can say, necessary or probable consequences of everything that has gone before. Then and then the excellence in plot construction, you will find it out. Because a poet should put all these things in such a way, he should collect the episodes in such a way that they will point out towards change of fortune, and the consequences of this change of fortune will lead towards the resolution. Probable consequences of everything will lead towards resolution of the plot. That means the poet should get a skill. That's why it's a craft. Creative writing, in a sense, is a craft. And craft is a sort of skill which you need to learn it. Not all the skills are by birth, are not naturally gifted. You have to learn the skills. And this is what Aristotle is saying, that if there is unskillful resolution, which he mentions in chapter number 18, that if there is any kind of unskillful resolution, you will find out when the poet has to resort to an arbitrary device. Because if he's unskillful, he has to reach to such an arbitrary device, which in latter part we call it as deus machina, that with machine or with the help of some supernatural element, the resolution is to be searched out, the resolution is to be find out. if the poet is unskillful in reaching to the resolution of that particular action. And that's why he has, if he is unskillful, then he has to take support of certain arbitrary device which will help him to get the plot to work out as he wants. And this arbitrary device, Aristotle is mentioning about the divine intervention. What is the arbitrary device? The arbitrary device is nothing but a divine intervention. And here he gives an example of Euripides' very famous play Medea, Medea. Aristotle feels that the playwright has created a situation in which Medea cannot be extracted from the danger in any necessary or probable way. He's stuck up in the danger in such a way that he cannot come out of it. Now, if such type of things took place, what would be the solution? How it should reach to resolution? You cannot make it to stuck up at that particular point. Then it will not reach to what we are supposed to get, a sort of, you can say, purgation of human emotions. And that's why, my friends, in Medea, Euripides, Medea is stuck up in such a situation where there is no necessary or probable way to get out of it. And that's why what happens, Euripides has therefore resorted to that premise that the gods can do anything. Now, in supposed to reach to the resolution of the play, the divine intervention is helpful. This will lead to my question that I raised just before, that we find some sort of contradiction that Aristotle mentioned somewhere in chapter number 6 that God and all those things cannot be part of any sort of creative writing of any tragic poet. But the if a tragic poet is stuck up between this type of situation where he is not finding out any solution for it, not in necessity, not in probability, he is not finding any sort of solution into it, what he will do? Naturally, in these cases, the God's intervention, the divine intervention, the arbitrary device of divine intervention has to be used to reach to that particular solution. And that's why you will find out in Medea, Euripides used God with a flying chariot, and Medea, who is stuck in a complicated war situation, can fly with that God's flying chariot, can fly away from that particular situation. He will get out of that particular situation. In fact, Aristotle reject this kind of device. And Aristotle's rejection of this kind of device uh, does not imply that divine involvement is inappropriate in general. Because if Aristotle is rejecting, then what we will say? We'll say that Aristotle rejects it, that means it is not accepted in any case by Aristotle. Aristotle is not accepting these things. But Aristotle's rejection does not imply that a tragic poet should not use arbitrary devices like divine intervention. No, he can use if he wants to reach to resolution. If he is not reaching to resolution, then he is not able to find out any sort of solution for this particular complicated critical situation. And so Aristotle is, although he is not ready to accept, he is not ready to think, or he is not ready to point out that yes, divine intervention is one of the most important part of any tragedy. No, he is not ready to accept this. Divine intervention is possible when the skillful resolution is not possible by the tragic poet. In that case, divine intervention is accepted. Now, on one use of gods, which he explicitly approved, he approved this use of God at certain moment. Why? Because he wants to convey information about those parts of the plot which fall outside of the play. You're getting it? Which things of God Aristotle is approving? The things which usually takes place outside of the play and that needs to be expressed, that needs to be narrated to the audience, that need to be part of your whole action in a plot, then in these cases the gods saying, prophecy, fortune is approved by Aristotle. Because a god explaining the background to the play in a prologue, or God appearing to foretell the future at the end of the play. These would be the typical examples that Aristotle approved. Aristotle accepts when he talked about reaching tragedy to a resolution. But there is, of course, much middle ground, because the extremes of arbitrary intervention and mere conveying of the information, there is very much big ground in Euripides' another play, Hippolytus. Aristotle is giving this example of Hippolytus. And that's why I said at the beginning of our lecture that in Poetics, Aristotle used the three great tragedians of Greek tragedy. He's taking support of some of their plays to analyze the whole idea and concept. And in Euripides' Hippolytus, Aphrodite, the character, does not just appear in the prologue to convey the information, it is her resentment, it is her saying which sets the whole action into the motion. Aphrodite is a goddess, Greek goddess. It sets the whole action into the motion. And her intervention in human affairs is essential for that particular plot, to the casual structure of the plot. It is essential for the casual structure of the plot that God is intervening in human affairs. Now, if the plot consists of God to be the hero of that particular thing, God to be the hero of that particular whole idea, then in this case we can able to find out, we can able to understand that Aristotle does not have any objection for this because God himself is a part of the whole action. Her intervention, Aphrodite's intervention in Hippolytus is well motivated. She's angered that with the way that Hippolytus dishonors her as a goddess, and this leads to change in fortune, and this leads to the whole tragedy. The consequences follow with, you can say, follow by the necessity or probability of the whole action that took place. So to be sure that Aristotle did not believe in such deities, as I said you earlier also, that Aristotle does not believe in such deities. But you know something from the further studies of poetics that in somewhere in chapter number 25, Aristotle says that the truth of theological premises which the poets use is great concern, is of a great concern. He has not given anything, any solution for it, but he feels it's a great concern for him that how the poets are using great deities, gods, an intervention of gods into the whole understanding of human affair. That's why he can accept unconcernedly the role of prophecies, which plays a crucial role in Sophocles' Oedipus and even in Odyssey also. He accepts at certain moment. He accepts those things at a certain point. And that's why Aristotle is trying to point out that complication and resolutions, both the things are part of action which are essential to reach to the expected results of tragedy, which are important for a better plot construction, which are important for making the play more beautiful. And complication is usually taking place at the beginning or at the start of the play. There is an offstage activity of whose consequences will, with the help of necessity and probability, will reach to a resolution. And if a poet is unskillful in reaching to the resolution, then an arbitrary device like divine intervention can be possible in this regard. This is how, my friends, Aristotle talked about complication and resolution. Now, here we can say the whole discussion of tragedy comes to an end. Look out how many things Aristotle discussed in tragedy, how many things he brought into tragedy and tried to convince, tried to make his readers, try to make the readers of poetics to understand that how tragedy will change the whole perception of the society. And he can give a very beautiful, ideal society which is having clear cut idea of emotions that are evoked out of the creative writing of the tragedies. So here today we come to an end with tragedy, and our next topic of discussion in this regard is what Aristotle discusses in poetics is epic.